The air over the Sulu Sea is thick with tension, as if the clouds themselves sense the unease simmering below. Naval patrol boats cut through the waters, a silent reminder of the fragile peace that hangs in the balance. July 21, 2025. The old argument between the Philippines and Malaysia over Sabah is heating up again, reigniting a dispute that has never truly faded from the region's memory. In Manila, politicians revived the claim to North Borneo, calling it a lost part of their nation. Their speeches echo through the halls of Congress and spill out onto the streets where protesters wave flags and demand action. Across the water, Kuala Lumpur responds with unwavering rejection, declaring Sabah an inseparable part of Malaysia. Officials stand firm, insisting that the state's future is not up for negotiation. This is more than a border dispute. It's a wound that has festered for generations, shaped by colonial legacies and the memories of families divided by invisible lines. For the Philippines, it's about historical justice, a quest to reclaim what they believe was unjustly taken, fueled by old treaties and ancestral memories. For Malaysia, it's about national identity and security. Sabah is not just a territory, but a symbol of unity and sovereignty, fiercely protected by its people and government. The people of Sabah live under the Malaysian flag, but the Philippine claim is a constant shadow, an ever-present reminder that their home sits at the heart of a regional tug-of-war. The recent discovery of offshore energy reserves has reignited the dispute, making it about economic wealth as much as history. Oil and gas beneath the seafloor have added new urgency to old grievances. Both sides know what's at stake: control of resources that could transform their economies, fund development, and shift the balance of power in Southeast Asia. As rhetoric intensifies, the risk of miscalculation grows. A small incident could spiral out of control. Even a misunderstanding between fishermen or patrols could spark a crisis neither side truly wants. The world watches, aware that a conflict here could destabilize Southeast Asia. Diplomats scramble for solutions while regional organizations urge restraint and dialogue. The quiet tension of today could become tomorrow's crisis, turning Borneo's waters into a new front line. As the sun sets over the Sulu Sea, uncertainty lingers, and the world holds its breath, hoping for peace but preparing for the storm. To truly understand the Sabah dispute, we must journey back in time to an era shaped by powerful sultans and the ambitions of colonial empires. The story begins in the 19th century, when Southeast Asia was a patchwork of kingdoms, sultanates, and colonial outposts, each vying for influence and control. The Sultanate of Sulu, a once mighty maritime kingdom, held sway over parts of the southern Philippines and the northeastern coast of Borneo, what is now known as Sabah. Its influence stretched across the Sulu Sea, connecting islands and peoples through trade, diplomacy, and sometimes conflict. In 1878, a pivotal moment arrived. The Sultan of Sulu signed an agreement with a British syndicate. The interpretation of just one word in that document, whether it meant lease or cession, would become the heart of a conflict that endures to this day. The Philippines insists the agreement was a lease, meaning sovereignty was never surrendered. Malaysia, on the other hand, maintains it was a cession, a permanent transfer of territory. The British North Borneo Company took over administration, governing the land for decades. After World War II, as colonial rule faded, North Borneo's future became a pressing question. In 1963, North Borneo joined the newly formed Malaysia. Malaysia points to the 1963 referendum where Sabah's people voted to join the Federation as the final and decisive word on the matter. But the Philippines never accepted this outcome. Just before Malaysia's formation, it formally registered its claim to Sabah, arguing that the territory rightfully belongs to the heirs of the Sultan of Sulu. To this day, Malaysia continues to make annual payments to the Sultan's heirs. The Philippines calls this rent evidence of their ongoing rights. Malaysia insists it's a cession payment, a relic of a settled past. This ambiguity has created a complex legal and diplomatic puzzle, with both sides presenting arguments rooted in history, law, and national pride. Both nations point to old treaties, colonial records, and legal documents to bolster their claims, each interpreting the past to support their present-day positions. The British may have departed, but the legacy of colonialism lingers on, fueling mistrust, unresolved questions, and conflicting narratives that shape the region's politics. The lines drawn by empires long ago still divide nations today, leaving a legacy of dispute and division that continues to echo across Southeast Asia. The Philippine claim is rooted in historical right and legal inheritance. Manila frames Sabah as an unfinished chapter, never legally surrendered by the Sultanate of Sulu. Annual payments from Malaysia are called rent, reinforcing the narrative of a lease. Malaysia's stance is absolute. Sabah is Malaysia, settled by self-determination in 1963. Any Philippine claim is seen as a challenge to Sabah's people and Malaysia's integrity. Leaders on both sides use powerful language, nationalist for the Philippines, defensive for Malaysia. This creates a diplomatic deadlock with both sides starting from irreconcilable assumptions. Even the language is a battleground. North Borneo offends Malaysia, non-issue offends the Philippines. The two countries are locked in a battle of narratives, historical injustice versus modern nationhood. Until one side changes its story, the disagreement will remain. The dispute is a permanent source of friction between neighbors. Dialogue is nearly impossible when both sides refuse to budge. Compromise on Sabah is nearly impossible. National pride and identity are at stake. For Filipinos, the claim is a symbol of heritage. Giving it up feels like betrayal. Politicians risk being labeled traitors if they suggest a softer stance. For Malaysia, Sabah is vital, rich in resources and central to national unity. Any concession could encourage secession elsewhere and weaken the federation. History and emotion make rational negotiation difficult. Each generation inherits the dispute. Joint resource development is viewed with suspicion by both sides. Even taking the case to international court is risky. Losing would be a national humiliation. Both prefer the status quo managed disagreement over a definitive outcome. The emotional weight of history makes resolution extremely challenging. The dispute endures, fueled by pride and fear of political instability. The Sabah dispute is deeply entangled with the broader, ongoing tensions in the South China Sea, a region marked by overlapping claims and strategic rivalries. Both the Philippines and Malaysia find themselves facing China's expansive maritime claims, which threaten their sovereignty and access to vital resources. Yet the issue of Sabah divides them, preventing a truly united stance. China skillfully exploits this division, using diplomatic and economic leverage to weaken any potential united front among Southeast Asian nations. Beijing's assertive actions in the South China Sea, such as deploying Coast Guard and naval vessels, directly impact both the Philippines and Malaysia, exposing their vulnerabilities and testing their resolve. The strategic value of Sabah goes far beyond its colonial history. It sits at a key maritime crossroads, controlling access to important shipping lanes and rich fishing grounds. For the Philippines, gaining control over Sabah would extend its strategic depth, offering greater security and influence in the region. For Malaysia, Sabah is not just territory. It anchors the nation's presence on Borneo, and is vital for its national identity and security. The dispute further complicates regional alliances. The United States supports the Philippines in its disputes with China, yet officially recognizes Sabah as part of Malaysia, creating diplomatic friction. Malaysia must carefully balance its relationships with both China and the US, but the unresolved Sabah claim adds another layer of complexity to its foreign policy. The unresolved Sabah dispute acts as a pawn in a much larger geopolitical chess game, increasing instability and uncertainty throughout the region. This entanglement distracts both the Philippines and Malaysia from focusing on the bigger threats posed by external powers, weakening their ability to respond effectively. Ultimately, the Sabah issue is more than just a bilateral disagreement. It represents a significant vulnerability in Southeast Asia's collective security framework. The regional chessboard is crowded with powerful players, and Sabah remains a critical piece that everyone wants to control, shaping the future of the South China Sea. In 2013, Sabah's tensions erupted into violence. Armed followers of the self-proclaimed Sultan of Sulu landed in Lahadatu, aiming to reclaim ancestral land. A tense standoff followed, with Malaysian forces demanding surrender. Negotiations failed. Malaysia launched a military assault, Ops Daulat. The fighting left dozens dead and shocked Malaysia, exposing security vulnerabilities. The incident was a traumatic reminder that the dispute can turn deadly. For Malaysia, it meant a stronger military presence and deepened mistrust of the Philippines. For the Philippines, it was a source of embarrassment and division. The memory of Lahadatu is a grim warning. The Sabah dispute can quickly escalate from words to violence. The scar remains, shaping relations to this day. The Philippines and Malaysia face similar military challenges but take different approaches. The Philippine armed forces are battle-hardened but focused on internal threats, leaving external defense weak. Recent modernization aims to shift focus to territorial defense, especially at sea. Malaysia maintains a balanced, modern force with advanced air and naval capabilities. The 2013 Lahadatu incident led Malaysia to bolster defenses in Sabah, creating ESCOM for rapid response. Both nations struggle with limited budgets and corruption, delaying modernization. Malaysia's strategy is defensive, secure Sabah, and prevent another incursion. The Philippines must balance external threats from China with persistent security issues in the south. Officially, Manila does not endorse military action over Sabah, but must be ready for contingencies. Geography and history keep the militaries on alert. The shadow of conflict lingers over the Sulu Sea. The Sabah dispute threatens not just two nations, but the region's stability. ASEAN's unity is at risk. A conflict between the Philippines and Malaysia would paralyze the bloc. This would weaken efforts to counter China's assertiveness in the South China Sea. The US faces a dilemma: treaty ally with the Philippines, but recognizes Sabah as Malaysian. Any conflict would force Washington to choose, damaging alliances. Maritime security in the Sulu and Celebes Seas depends on Philippine-Malaysian cooperation. A breakdown would create a vacuum for criminals, terrorists, and outside powers. China could exploit the rift, shifting the regional balance. The world watches to see if diplomacy can prevail over nationalism. A peaceful resolution would reinforce international law. Escalation would set a dangerous precedent. The stakes are regional and global. The Sabah dispute is a reminder that history shapes the present and threatens the future. For the Philippines, it's about justice. For Malaysia, it's about sovereignty. 60 years of deadlock have made the issue a persistent source of tension. The region's future depends on unity, but Sabah is a vulnerability that larger powers can exploit. The dispute distracts from shared challenges: security, development, climate change. A peaceful solution would benefit both nations and strengthen ASEAN. But the path is fraught with risk, as Lahadatu showed. Any escalation could devastate economies and draw in outside powers. The people of Sabah deserve peace and certainty. Resolving the dispute requires courage, empathy, and a commitment to dialogue. Until then, Sabah's future and the region's stability hangs in the balance.